sacrifice of those officers and the loss to those families.
It's a healing place. It's a beautiful place. It's law enforcement's holy ground.
30 years since this memorial's been dedicated. Yeah, the history of the memorial really goes back to the 1970s when a police officer in New York suggested we enact legislation to build a National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. That led to the effort to raise the money, to select the site. The first national ceremony during Police Week was in 1982. That was 2 years before this memorial was authorized by Congress. More than 4 million Americans contributed money to make sure that this monument was built. And now we have a National Law Enforcement Museum right across the street to tell the stories behind the names on these walls. When we were creating the design for this memorial, we wanted it to be a peaceful, park-like setting where families and colleagues and citizens could come and reflect on the level of service and sacrifice law enforcement gives this country. The touching moments that occurred, and you see it every day. It allows them that moment to remember and honor their fallen colleague or fallen loved one.
There's this sort of haunting, majestic beauty here. It's the way that it moves fluidly, how understated and beautiful it is. My brother, Brian T. Gibson, was a Metropolitan Police officer. We're at 50E, which is where Brian's name is. He's right here. The first time I saw Brian's name on the wall was really difficult. I remember my mother and I both put our hands on it. You feel the embrace of thousands of other law enforcement officers. It's not just your officer.
We lost Harvey to 9/11 related cancer. It changes everything when it's someone you knew. Everything just kind of comes back at once, and there's just a very real presence when you come here because they're here too.
My husband, Sergeant Chris Eney, died in the line of duty in August of 1984. When I lost Chris, I really didn't know what to do or where to go. But being near this memorial brought me comfort. Being around others who had lost their loved ones, it became a family. Especially if it's around Police Week, you see a lot of children. My girls were 9 and 11 when their dad died. To see these children here can really tear at the heartstrings. To have this for survivors coming in and these other law enforcement officers, it just means everything. It just can bring such peace, even through tears. You're not alone when you're here.
So while I'm here etching my brother's name, they are adding panels to the wall because we know that so many more officers are going to make that ultimate sacrifice, and it's really sad.
There will be more names and more survivors coming in, and we will be here for all of them.
It is comforting to know that the sacrifice of thousands of law enforcement officers will not be forgotten. The wall remembers and honors them.
Police officers have always put their lives on the line to serve and protect their communities. To families and co-workers of the 394 names being read tonight, please know their dedication, bravery, and sacrifice will never be forgotten.
We pay homage to their courage and their bravery. We remember their service, and we seek to comfort and console the family and friends that they have left behind.
My name is Detective Shauna McClure, and Carrie Orozco was my coworker at the Omaha Police Department. Carrie was incredibly dedicated to serving her community. Beyond the uniform was a friend, a mentor. She was a wife and a mother, and she's an all-around damn good woman. Carrie and her husband, Hector, were expecting their first child together. Carrie delivered Olivia prematurely. She made the decision not to start her maternity leave until after Olivia was released from the hospital. The day Carrie died was her last day on the job before her maternity leave was set to begin. May 20th, 2015 was a beautiful, sunny spring day when a voice came over the radio.
Shots fired, officer down. I repeat, officer down.
When I got there, I saw that it was Carrie. And she was not breathing on her own. And Carrie died in my arms.
5 Delta. We're going to her final call.
Service.
Officer Carrie Orozco, may her soul rest in eternal peace.
I was so overcome with guilt that it absolutely consumed me. My inability to save her. When I tell you that I broke, I mean, I broke. It was because of some serious unconditional love that I scraped up enough strength to pick myself up and get back in the fight. I went to the wall almost a year to the day from the date that Carrie was killed. When I walked up, I remember kneeling down and seeing her name etched in the wall was such a feeling of finality. You look around and you see her name amongst all of her brothers and sisters that made that ultimate sacrifice, and you see these incredible memorials, and it's just breathtaking. The Candlelight Vigil really added to the experience being in amongst other survivors.
From the state of Nebraska, Carrie Sue Orozco.
There is something that happens in that moment when you realize that you're not alone. When you realize that somebody else understands. And it was in that moment that I realized that we are all in this together. That was an incredible moment. That's what it means to be a survivor.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Board of Directors of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund and their distinguished guests. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Merrick Garland, Attorney General of the United States. The Honorable Alejandro Mayorkas, Secretary of the United States Department of Homeland Security. Congresswoman Val Demings. Congressman John Rutherford. Managing Partner of Ashcroft Law Firm and Board Chair of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, Lori Sharp Day. And Marcia Ferranto, Chief Executive Officer of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund. His name is Officer Tamaris Bohannon. He was described as brave, kind-hearted, and full of laughter. He also enjoyed pulling pranks. On the afternoon of August 20th, 2020, Officer Bohannon responded to a 911 call for a shooting, where an armed suspect was hiding inside a home. As Bohannon approached, the suspect opened fire from a second-floor window, striking him in the head. For the next 24 hours, he fought to survive, but eventually succumbed to his injuries. Officer Bohannon, a 3.5-year veteran of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, grew up in St. Louis and wanted to make a difference and serve the community where he lived with his family. He married his high school sweetheart, Alexis, and together they were raising 3 young children. He was ambitious. He had dreams. He had his life and his career ahead of him, when it was tragically cut short. He was only 29 years old. Officer Tamaris Bohannon's name now joins the thousands of other law enforcement heroes who have made the ultimate sacrifice, engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. Please welcome Marcia Ferranto, Chief Executive Officer of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund.
Good evening. And this evening, we have the Bohannon family joining us here in the front row. Wife Alexis, daughter Tamara, Tyler, Aiden's missing. He stayed at home with his grandfather. We want you to know that your husband, your father, was a true hero. And it is our promise to make sure that his sacrifice, that their sacrifice, will never be forgotten. Tamaris has a special story, as do all the 701 law enforcement officers we are honoring here tonight. To pay them proper tribute, each of their names will be read as part of the ceremony and will forever be etched on the walls of a national memorial and the hearts of a grateful nation. To them and their families, and to all law enforcement professionals who serve and protect us, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's Board of Directors who've joined me here on the dais, it is my honor and privilege to welcome all of you to this milestone occasion, the 33rd Annual Candlelight Vigil, to honor the service and the sacrifice of America's law enforcement professionals and families. In addition to the more than 20,000 members of law enforcement, survivors, and citizen supporters who have gathered here tonight, we also welcome thousands from around the nation who are watching this solemn event on live webcast. I would like to express our sincere gratitude to presenting sponsor Verizon and platinum sponsor the Motorola Solutions Foundation, and all our other sponsors and individuals who contributed to make this evening a success. Thank you for your generosity and your dedication to our nation's law enforcement officers and their families. When we dedicated the Law Enforcement National Memorial 30 years ago, there were more than 12,500 names on its walls. As a tribute to those men and women, we read each of their names in a final roll call of honor. It lasted a full 24 hours. Ever since, we have given that same honor to each name that has been added to this national treasure. We continue that proud tradition tonight with the reading of 701 names added in 2020 and 2021. These names are now officially dedicated on the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial walls.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of colors by the United States Park Police Honor Guard and the singing of the national anthem by United States Capitol Police Officer Irina Stoikova.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the lands of the free and the home of the brave.
Please remain standing as Reverend Markel Hutchins, CEO of Movement Forward, lead organizer of National Faith and Blue Weekend, and a member of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund Board of Directors, gives the invocation.
Let us pray. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way. God, we come here this evening because we have faith in you. We know you by many names. We know you from different perspectives and walks of life, but we know that there is a power that is greater than our own. We come tonight because we have faith in you, but we also have faith in one another. Faith that moves us beyond the divisions and separations that seem to be so pervasive in our culture and in our discourse. But God, we come tonight knowing that you still have all power in your hand. We pray that you would do what only you can do, that you would heal every family who's lost a loved one, who is a law enforcement professional, that you would touch every family from the crowns of their heads to the soles of their feet. Put your loving arms around them and help them to know that our nation rejoices and celebrates the loss, celebrates the life of those who've been lost. God, we pray that you would rest on this gathering, that you would protect our law enforcement professionals like never before, that you would bring us together like never before. Rest on this ceremony. We know that if we have faith, you have power to see us through. See us through. Your scripture records, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray and seek your face and turn from our wicked ways and then turn to each other and not on each other, we would hear from heaven. You would hear our prayer, forgive our sins, and heal our land. Heal our land. In your name we pray. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Lori Sharp Day, Managing Partner of the Ashcroft Law Firm and Board Chair of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund.
Good evening.
On behalf of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund Board of Directors, I want to once again welcome you to the annual 33rd Candlelight Vigil. We haven't done this for a while. For the last 18 months, we haven't been able to be together. We have read names virtually, and we have been together on the phone and on Zoom. But tonight is a chance to recognize how important it is for all of us to be here together to read these names and recognize their sacrifice. The pandemic changed so much for so many people. One thing it did do is it gave a lot of people a lot of choices. People who could work from home, people who could social distance very easily. But what it didn't do is change the choice, give law enforcement choices. They had to go work on the front lines. They couldn't choose to not service a citizen's needs because that citizen wasn't wearing a mask. They were literally on the front lines protecting our liberties and our freedoms. And they continue to remind us what a dangerous profession law enforcement can be. For those of you who are first-time Candlelight Vigil attendees, welcome. After we read these names and recognize these fallen heroes, your life and your appreciation for the sacrifices that they have given will be forever changed. For those survivors who are here tonight, we are all so sorry. We are all so sorry, and we know that our words cannot restore what you have lost. We know that thank you is never enough. But please know that when we raise our candles tonight, it is our collective effort to show our appreciation for what you have truly lost and that we can't understand. We know your loss is deep, profound, and a daily struggle. But we want to support you. We want to show you that we care about your families and that we care about your loss. And please know you will always be in our hearts and our minds. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Merrick Garland, Attorney General of the United States.
We are gathered here today to honor those 701 fallen officers whose names have been added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. We gather because grieving, remembering, and honoring those who we have lost means more when we can do it together. I am honored to be here in person with you for this occasion. In my role as Attorney General, I think daily of the great risks you face when doing your jobs as law enforcement officers. Any investigation, any search or arrest could lead to a tragic loss. Yet despite those risks, you run toward danger to protect the public from harm. Your extraordinary courage and dedication is an inspiration for all of us. Recent events confirm the stark reality of the risks that you face daily in the line of duty. Federal agents, including those of the ATF, DEA, FBI, and U.S. Marshals Service, serve alongside our state, local, tribal, and territorial partners to keep our communities safe. In very recent days, DEA Special Agent Michael Garbo and Senior Inspector and Deputy U.S. Marshal Jared Keyworth made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. I would like to honor their service, along with that of the other law enforcement officers who lost their lives or who were injured in the line of duty over the past 2 years. As we gather here today, we are hopeful that we are turning the corner in the fight against the pandemic that began previous March. The pandemic has created unprecedented challenges for law enforcement, and it has inflicted a devastating toll. Of the hundreds of members of law enforcement who died in the line of duty during the pandemic, nearly 2/3 succumbed to COVID-19. Through it all, and despite the increased risks to your health and your safety, you have continued to protect the communities you serve. As we gathered here today, we also know that we continue to face many other challenges in addition to the pandemic. Violent crime and gun violence persist at high levels. The opioid epidemic and the threat of fentanyl endanger all of our communities. And internet crimes, in particular online child sexual exploitation, have reached historic levels. To many, these challenges may seem insurmountable, but not to you. Each day, you fulfill the oath to protect and serve, and you do so selflessly, with optimism and pride that you can and do make a difference. I would like to conclude by acknowledging the families of the fallen. I know that you carry a great weight and that no event could fully recognize the loss that you have suffered. But please know, on behalf of the entire U.S. Department of Justice, you have our unwavering support and our gratitude. Thank you.
Please welcome the Honorable Alejandro Mayorkas, Secretary of the United States Department of Homeland Security.
My parents instilled in me a reverence for the men and women of law enforcement. They each grew up in countries where a person in uniform signaled danger, not safety. So when my parents brought me to America to raise our family in a democracy, it meant everything to them to see a police officer or sheriff and know that these individuals risked their lives to protect and to serve us all. Beginning when I was about 12 years old, whenever my mother stopped our Ford station wagon at an intersection and saw a law enforcement officer on the street corner, I was taught to get out of the back seat of the car, approach the officer, shake his or her hand, and say thank you. Reverence for the men and women of law enforcement remains very much a part of me today. Let it be so for our entire nation. Today we recognize the nobility of the law enforcement profession. We pay tribute to those who lost their lives in sacrifice of the safety of our communities, and we remember them, and we recognize you, the families, all of you, as heroes. The Department of Homeland Security, the largest law enforcement department in the federal government, has lost too many heroes over the past 2 years. We relentlessly continue to execute our mission as the best way to honor those who have fallen. We carry forward the awesome responsibility to protect and to serve as they did every single day. When a law enforcement officer steps out of his or her home to serve the community, the family steps out with them. You, the families, are heroes too. I wish I could shake each and every one of your hands. Let me light a candle this evening and say thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Emilio Miyares, the immediate past national president of Concerns of Police Survivors.
Good evening. My story begins when I was just 7 years old on November 6, 1986. That day, my dad, Hialeah, Florida policeman Emilio Fidel Miyares, and his partner, Felix Quintela, was riding down the road when a citizen waved them down of a pair of men walking around the dollar store with a rifle bag. The two officers started searching and found the men running into a mall. My dad and his partner ran in, and the chase ended at the end of a closed hallway. My dad grabbed him in a bear hug, and they told him to calm down. The struggle began, and they fell to the ground. The gunman gained control of my dad's gun, and while my dad was still on the ground with one knee, in front of many witnesses, my dad put his hands up and said, wait, I have kids. The man didn't care and shot him anyways. The gunman fled the scene and was later captured, strangely enough, a block away from my grandparents' house. My dad passed away that evening at age 27, in the hospital, surrounded by his family, blood and blue. He was survived by my mom, Terry, 29, me, 7, my sister, Jessica, 4, his parents, Emilio and Ana, and his brother, Leo. That day, my hero was gone, and my mom was left to carry everything on her shoulders. She is still my hero, and is sitting in the front row. My journey began to rebuild on May 1989 when I attended National Police Week for the first time here in DC with my mom and little sister. I was only 10 years old, and it was during National Police Week I learned I could connect with other survivors that truly related to my tragic experience. I wasn't alone, and I felt connection with other surviving kids. I felt normal again. We came back to Police Week every year and participated at COPS events, the National Law Enforcement Memorial and Candlelight Vigil, and the FOP Memorial Ceremony. After high school, I took a few years off from Police Week while going to college. In the summer of 2000, I attended COPS Outward Bound summer programs, and it taught me many things of outdoors, but it also reminded me of what I was missing, my COPS family. So I started getting more involved, and I went back to Police Week that following May. I began wanting to give back to survivors while still honoring my hero. I started mentoring other surviving children at COPS events. The more involved I got, the more I wanted. I realized everyone handles grief differently. I handled mine by getting involved and helping others. I found my purpose. I urge you to find yours. In 2010, I decided to get on the COPS National Board and was elected regional trustee on May of 2010. During that time, I married my wife, Terry Fuentes, and became fathers to Tiffany, that was born in 2002. We welcomed our second daughter, Emma, in June of 2014, and our third daughter, Emily, in August of 2016. I finalized my master's and became a CPA, and I still attended National Police Week, mentoring other COPS kids, and I became a member of Law Enforcement United. On July of 2019, I was elected national president. I can't imagine my life without my Blue family and the organization that has helped me rebuild my shattered life. To the young kids sitting in the audience, I was once you. To the surviving spouses with kids, please know that even with this tremendous loss they have faced, they can still be okay. Everyone has a different path and purpose, but over the years I realized mine was not just to honor my dad, but to also help other survivors understand that there is hope and peace in our new normal. I am humbled and honored to have served as National President of COPS, but more importantly, to have been able to share my journey. Thank you, and God bless.
The National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial was dedicated 30 years ago. Every year since, the names of the fallen have been read aloud to honor their sacrifice. Tonight, we continue that proud tradition with the reading of 701 names that were added to the memorial in 2020 and 2021. The names will be read by the Memorial Fund's Board of Directors and other special guests. They will be read in the order of the state in which they served. The candle lighting in honor of these and all of our nation's fallen law enforcement heroes will occur immediately following the names reading. Please refrain from lighting your candles until after the memorial candle is lit on stage and the flame is passed on to all of you. At this time, Attorney General Garland will begin this evening's roll call of honor.
William Ray Beekner, Abram S. Johnson, Waitasha Lamar Carter, Billy Fred Clardy III, Nicholas Daniel O'Rear, Levy Petway, John Arthur Williams Sr., William Eaton Hayes, William A. Russell Jr., Sean Paul Tudor, Julius Jamal Daly, Stephen Paul Williams, Gail S. Green, Dornell Cousette, Parnell Leroy Guyton.
From the state of Arizona, Gene Wade Lee, Jason W. Judd, Greg Scott Carnicle, Paul Thomas Rutherford. From the state of Arkansas, Ollie Edward Mitz, George W. Rogers, Euless Melvin Baldwin, Ed Thomas Allen, Stephen Paul Carr, Travis Sentel Wallace, Brent William Perry Scrimshire, James Lawrence Dancy, Kevin Dwayne Collins, Michael David Stephen Sr.
From the state of California, Oscar Walter Rocha, Rudolph Bond, Daniel Lopez Mendoza III, Stephen Lawrence Lycon, Andy Ornelius, Andre Maurice Moyer Jr., Natalie Becky Corona, Efren Cornel, Brian David Ishmael, Jose Cruz Mora Jr., Angel De La Fuente, Elmer Jonathan Diaz, Ames Randolph Jones.
From the state of Connecticut, Stephen A. Ketchum, Matthew Bradley Manieri, From the District of Columbia, Mark Randall Eckenrode. Keith D. Williams, Sr.
From the state of California, William Boet, Esmeralda Ponce Ramirez, Juan Jose Diaz, Larry Dean Chrome, Carlos J. Kamen, Donald Keith Sumner, Virgil Lynn Thomas Sr., Leroy Hopkins Tripp, Harry Morris Cohen, Terrell Don Young.
Continuing from the state of California, Tara Christina O'Sullivan, Charles H. Wetzel, Daniel Jean Walters, Harry A. Pelshon, Damon Christopher Getzweiler, Mary Lou Hernandez Armour, Henson Pyle, Warren Byron Willard.
From the state of Colorado, Joshua Eli Voth, Daniel H. Groves, William James Modane, Kurt Michael Holland, James C. Ritchie, Andrew Sandberg, Jeffrey Christopher Hopkins, Brandon Patrick Unit, Alfred Alfonso Personette, John M. McGee, Joe E. Tucker.
From the state of Florida, William Creighton Newberry, Benjamin Ryan Nims, Aldemar Rengifo Jr., Shannon Santo Bennett, Eric John Twisdale, Stephen James Dodson, Charles Edward Williams, Robert Wayne Rogers, Julian L. Keene, Daniel Dunn Hilton, Tracy Leslie Vickers, Joseph John Bullock.
Continuing from the state of Florida, John Luff Owens, Gary Vickers, Thomas H. Branch, Christopher Michael Cunningham Sr., Lynn D. Jones, Richard Mark Berry, Paul Patrick Dunn, Kenneth Dale Foley, Corey Pendergrass, Comas Celis Revels.
Continuing from the state of Florida, Aubrey Travis Johnson, Jr., Hero Antonio Bravo, Joseph Robinson, Angela Denise Chavers, Maurice Chevalier Ford, Jose Antonio Diaz Ayala, William Thomas Etheridge, Stephen James Brown, Anthony Neary, Charles Otis Pugh II.
From the state of Georgia, Robert Sidney Wallace. Edgar Pleeman Harris. L. Dale Allen. James Joseph Bealo. Quintarius Dwayne Taylor. Avery Delshawn Hillman. Bobby Sue Honey. Jan Alice Ash. Philip Craver Rotis. Spencer Allen England. William Robert Gardner. Kenny Bernard Ingram. Anthony Lamar White.
Continue from the state of Georgia, Stanley Curtis Elrod, James Edward Morton, James Michael Kanacha, Joshua Brian Ryer Jr., Brian Keith McNair, Nicholas Blaine Dixon, Stephen Bradley Crazy Wolf Dudden, Patrick David Snook, Sheldon Gordon Whiteman, Michaela Elizabeth Smith, Isaac Elbert McLeod, Joseph Warren Brown.
Continuing from the state of Georgia, Cecil Dwayne Ridley, Charles Edward Norton, Stephen Allen Minor, Kelvin Bernard Ansari, Christopher Eric Ewing, Philip Edward Street. From the state of Hawaii, Tiffany Victoria Bylan Enriquez, Kalike Sailor Gerard Kalama. From the state of Idaho, Wyatt Christopher Mazer, Vernell E. Keller.
From the state of Illinois, James Watkins, Herbert Bronson, Titus Diopsy Moore, Marco DeFranco, Clifford Willie Martin Sr., Ronald Newman, Antoine Pierre Jones, Richard William O'Brien Jr., Sheila Janelle Rivera, Jose Pedro Marquez.
Continuing from the state of Illinois, Troy Philip Chisholm, Terrence Allen Engel, Nicholas John Hopkins, Christopher James Lambert, Brooke Elizabeth Jones Story, Gerald Wayne Ellis, Jacob Howard Keltner, Joseph Benjamin Hood, Bert S. Plattenberger, Bryant Hemphill.
From the state of Indiana, Joseph Fishblack Sr., Tejuan Fortrese Johnson, Peter Richard Stefan, Brianne Rochelle Leith, Kenneth Reed Lester, David Paul Hewitt. From the state of Iowa, Stephanie Jean Schurz. From the state of Kansas, Alan Joseph Weber. Charles A. McKinney. George Bernard Robert. Olufella A. Adabi. Gabe Morales. Daniel Ray Abramovitz. Michael Sean Mosier.
From the state of Kentucky, George T. Benz, Marion Lane, Isaac Pennington, Bobby Wayne Jacobs, John Arthur Lawson, Christopher Michael Halsey, Alonzo Robinson, William E. Maddox, James Traver Kirk.
From the state of Louisiana, Shane Michael Toddy, Glenn Dale Hutto, Jr., Kevin Paul Trahan, Byron Sean Romeo, Donna Michelle Richardson Bello, Stephen Dwayne Weinstein, Levi Kelly Arnold Sr., Claude Winston Guillory, Caitlin Marie Colley, George Bowman Baker, Vincent Nat Liberto Jr.
Continuing from the state of Louisiana, Marshall Lee Waters Jr., Raymond Andrew Bozeman, Sharon M. Williams, Mark Abbott Hall Sr., Stephen Michael Godet Jr., Larry Wayne Jean, Randy Michael Ballard, Shateri Elise Payne, Ketrell Michael Pitts, Keyshawn Ortez Bates.
From the state of Maine, Benjamin James Campbell, Pearlie Morrison Sprague, from the state of Maryland, Alexander McIntosh, Charles J. Walsh, John H. Dames, James T. Harvey, Francis J. Fulham, Edgar C. Shalito, Arthur R. Cornwaith,
Continuing from the state of Maryland, Kyle David Olinger. From the state of Massachusetts, Danford Dunn, Daniel W. Sullivan, Alonzo Burnham, Thomas Edmund Young, Albert Harry Giles, John Franklin Montague, Felix Francis Sharkey, Robert Andrew Marr, Edward C. Lynch, Samuel Reynolds, David Ray Brown.
Continuing from the state of Massachusetts, Thomas F. Dinan, Alan Foss Ray Jr., James B. DiShazo, Thomas William Devlin, Harold Francis McGilwray Jr., Harold J. Collins, John D. Sanji.
From the state of Michigan, Stephen Splan, Benton James Hacker, Michael Joseph Tralka, Scott James Larkins, Rasheen Philippe McLean, Jonathan David Parnell, Waldis Venice Johnson.
Continuing from the state of Michigan, William James Darnell, Nelson Reed Cook, Homer Edward Hatt, Edwin John Warmsbaker, Caleb Howard Starr, Francis William Lemonian, William D. McCabe, Donna Faye Collins, Dean Michael Sard, Bryant Searcy, Benny N. Napoleon.
From the state of Minnesota, Frank E. McGregor, Eugene Herman Wynn, Jr., Limick Arthur Larson. From the state of Mississippi, Robert Stanton McKeithen, Jeremy Allen Voiles, Henry R. Campbell, William C. Cooper, Carter I. Jones, Marshall Lee London, Jr., Willie Houston West, Dylan Scott Pickle, E. Ray Hawkins, James Harold Blair.
From the state of Missouri, David William Waymeyer, Andrew Derek Clark, Dwight Eugene Willis, Ricky Allen Groves, Wayne Mark Niedenberg, Kendall Glenn Blackburn, Richard Allen Wright, Herschel Rico Turner Jr., Michael Vincent Langsdorf, Christopher Ryan Walsh, Tamaris L. Bohannon, Richard T. Blue.
From the state of Montana, Jacob Otto Almendinger. From the state of Nebraska, Randy Zoray Haddix, L. Mario Herrera, Jerry Lewis Smith, Jr. From the state of Nevada, Marvin Lee Scott, Eric Larson Lloyd, John Carl Dorff, Benjamin Michael Jenkins.
From the state of New Jersey, April Eleanor Bird, Altariq Shondell Patterson, Gary Lewis Walker, Leroy George Palmer, Charles Edward Roberts III, Thomas Flynn, Thomas Joseph Kavanaugh, Eugene Osterson, Charles H. Ackerman, Richard H. Fletcher, Jr., Joseph Francis Sewell, Joseph Allen Seals.
Continuing from the state of New Jersey, Nelson Perdomo, Maria Gibbs, Brian U. McCoy, Michael Alexander Connors, Michael W. Clegg, Irving Jean Callender, Marcus Thomas, Christopher Dennis Cronin, Francesco Sebastiano Scorpo, John Zinger.
Continuing for the state of New Jersey and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, John V. McCabe, John J. Kane, Pavlos D. Paulus, Vincent Joseph Oliva, Lawrence A. Gruneri, Charles Bazardlo, James W. Kenley, Mark J. Meir, Michael Edmund Teal, William James Leahy, Thomas M. Inman, and William E. Dubrowski.
Continuing from the state of New Jersey, William Henry Letts, James Francis Knight, Arthur McKenna, and Alex Ruperto.
From the state of New York, John Thompson, Stephen B. McLeod, Walter Lowry Mallinson, Peter F. Curran, Peter Martino, Paul J. McCabe, Brian R. Abundandello, Michael P. Shea, James V. Quinn.
Continuing from the state of New York, Thomas A. Herbert, Edward J. Fitzgerald, William G. Parker, Nathaniel Holland, Jr., Mark Lawler, William T. Walsh, Joseph F. Hyde, Yolanda Cawley, Sean P. Franklin.
Continuing from the state of New York, Jason H. Offner, Thomas J. Gallagher, Gary M. Franklin, James E. Ryan, Scott R. Blackshaw, Barbara J. Sullivan, Robert P. Massey, John P. Ferrari, Lawrence J. Rivera.
Continuing from the state of New York, Robert Ortiz, Jeffrey A. Lee, Paul J. Johnson, Michael O. Diamond, Anthony R. Hanlon, Joseph L. Pidotto, Manuel Vargas, Jr., Wade Jason Williams.
Continuing from the state of New York, Jennifer Meehan, Audrey P. Capra, Thomas J. Lyons, Kenneth Xavier Dominic, Joseph M. Roman, Brian Paul Simonson, Gregory V. Melita, Philip T. Perry, Charles James Humphrey.
Philip E. Panzarella, Patrick Thomas McGovern, Keith A. Ferrara, James B. Boyle, Louis Gustavo Alvarez, Christopher E. Cranston, Thomas Santoro, Brian Charles Mulkeen,
Continuing from the state of New York, Nancy Puka, Michael H. Granis, Eric Murray, Jack V. Palmeni, Raymond C. Aber, Jeffrey Allen Scalf, Robert A. Cardona, Christopher B. McDonald, Frank L. Gagliano, William T. Norris, Justin C. Lenz.
Continuing from the state of New York, Robert Berwick, Stephen Lawrence Raymond, Jeffrey M. Sikora, Jennifer M. Zarnicki, Joseph Spinoza, Craig L. Capolino, Keith S. Allison, Randall Clayton French.
From the state of North Carolina, Jason Nicholas Chopin, Alexander Reginald Pittaway Jr., Lakaya Louise Rouse, Norman Odie Day Jr., Robert Lee Bain, William T. Bowman, Ryan Philip Hendricks, Sefirsit Fron Froth John, Jordan Harris Sheldon, Tyler Avery Herden, Jared Michael Allison, Nolan James Sanders, McKeem Victrell Brooks.
From the state of North Dakota, Cody Nathaniel Holt. From the state of Ohio, William Lee Brewer Jr., James Michael Skurnovich, Dale James Woods, George Renee Del Rio, Adam S. McMillan, Claude McCormick, Kaya LaFay Grant, Rex Foe, Anthony Hussein Dia.
From the state of Oklahoma, Jared John Taylor, Shirley Joe Lanning, Herschel A. Smith, Sam H. Scott, Brian Keith Crane, Michael Lee Loudenslager, Daniel Boyd Martin, Jeffrey Wade Sewell, J. H. Siller, Monty Thomas Johnson, Joseph Lanier, Craig Vincent Johnson, Willis Shepard. From the state of Oregon, Zachariah H. Stroud.
From the state of Pennsylvania, Robert William Seelock, Adam J. Hine, Mark Joseph Romutis, Joseph Daniel Coyle, Thomas E. Booz, John J. Kuhar, Jr., William Bell, William H. Paget, Michael Lee Henry, Jr., Alan Regis Capozzi, Dale Thomas Provins, Jr., Patrick Slevin, Philip Brady,
continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, Hillary Baker, Robert McGuffin, James Miller, Hiram Hammer, Jacob Albright, Thomas W. Lawler, John Lawley, John J. Hallowell, Elijah A. Brewer, Frank Clayton Hutton, William Sebastian Hendrickson, George Francis Nick, Frank Perry, Edward Charles Dorman, Jr.
Continuing from the state of Pennsylvania, James R. O'Connor IV, James Walker, Jr., Jose Manuel Novoa, Tab T. Ali, Frank Rocco Melillo, Sr., Joseph M. Yaus, John Stack, Richard A. Teague, Robert Earl McAllister, Ernest W. Gauja, William Lewis Ammerman.
From the state of South Carolina, Ethan Ross Kaskin, Thomas J. Martin, Jeremy Christopher Ledoux, Robert John Hall, Jackson Ryan Winkler, William Conley Jumper, Jr., Michael H. Ambrosino, Mikos Leonardo Newman, Michael Shaw Latu, Jacob William Hancher, Robert G. Johnston, Robert Morris McFadden, Andrew John Gillette, Mike K. Knotts, Marion Clifton Nettles Sr., Frank Henry Knapp.
From the state of South Dakota, Lee Russell Weber. From the state of Tennessee, Destin Scott Legeza, Jonathan Merriman, Thomas Obadiah Musgrove, Nicholas Scott Galinger, Joseph Brian Motijo, Stephen Michael Reese, Lon Rains, James O'Riddle, Oscar Leonard Nance, John Asbury Gillespie.
Continuing from the state of Tennessee, Spencer Daniel Bristol, Francis Marion Alford, Bobby Rodriguez Montgomery, John Ralph Anderson IV, Jeremy Devon Smith, Anthony Terrence Jackson Sr., Stephen Billy Hinkle, Deborah K. Porter Johnson, Matthew Elias Gaddy.
Continuing from the state of New Jersey, Anthony Joseph Lucanto. And now from the state of Texas, Lionel Q. Martinez, Jr., Jose Antonio Busso, Sr., Abner Matlock, Sheena Day Yarbrough Powell, John Andrew Roden, Timothy P. De La Fuente, William Homer Hill, Brad Andrew Briscoe, Jose Umberto Mesa, Alan Daniel McCullum, Charlie Williams Jr., Bronk Justin McCoy.
Continuing from the state of Texas, M. Wayne Rhodes, Marvin Wayne Trejo, Peter John Herrera, Alexander A. Arango, Matthew Ryan Jones, Caleb Daniel Rule, Albert Ramirez Castaneda, Jr., Mark Christopher Brown, Sandeep Singh Dhaliwal, Raymond John Skolwinski, Juan Menchaca, Jr., Cornelius Bernard Anderson.
Continuing from the state of Texas, Johnny Ramos Tunchus, Dennis Roy Oliver, Jr., Christopher Charles Lewis Brewster, Jason Michael Knox, Lemuel Del Rey Bruce, Jr., Harold Lloyd Preston, Ernest Leal, Jr., Dudley James Champ, Russell Dean Salazar, Carlos Aaron Ramirez, John Carter Scroggins, Jose Luis Blancart.
Continuing from the state of Texas, Richard Edward Whitten, Nicholas Lee Raina, Ismael Z. Chavez, Eldemiro Garza Jr., Bill Lankford Cornell Sr., Christopher Allen Smith, Nathan Hayden Heidelberg, Christopher Lynn Elder, Jose Luis Espericueta Jr., Jorge Cabrera, Kayla Marie Sullivan.
Continuing from the state of Texas, Lyle Jean Denny, William Christopher Dickerson, Tracy Allen Gaines, A. G. Hall, Clifton John Martinez, Brian Charles Pfluger, Justin Reed Putnam, David Lynn Schmidt, Ollie Parks, Charles Edward Holt III, Craig Lavarois King, Jerry William Jones, Joseph William Lang.
Continuing from the state of Texas, Kevin D. Wilcher, Jonathan Keith Goodman Sr., Coy Dale Kaufman Jr., James David Coleman, Maria Luisa Mendez, Thomas A. Ogenberg, Kenneth Wayne Harbin, Eric Travante Johnson, LeBois A. Bouwa, Herbert James Garcia, James Willard Weston Jr., Donald Eugene Parker, Roderick L. Rogers.
Continuing from the state of Texas, Moses Sanchez, Ernest St. Leon, David Jones Fitzpatrick, Dale Edward Moulter, Christopher Scott Corzelius, Joseph Lamar Kolb, Raul Adam Gomez. From the state of Utah, Nathan James Ladoy, Joseph William Shiners. From the state of Vermont, Frank Alman Hayden.
From the state of Virginia, Robert Charles Sandukjian, Catherine Marie Tyne, Tony John Peaches, William R. Cray, Michael McCarthy, Julius Schultz, Joseph Say, James Carter, James Cox, John Kerr, John Maher, Daniel G. Tourgy, James Walker, Angela Nett Moore, Lucas Bartley Dowell.
From the state of Washington, Curtis James Engett. Jonathan Paul Shoup. Justin Richard DeRosier. John Michael Melvin. Ryan Shane Thompson. Michael Franklin Knapp. Cooper Andrew Dyson. Beresford Anthony Morse. S. Renee Paget. Justin Robert Schaefer. Daniel Glenn Oakes.
From the state of West Virginia, Cassie Marie Johnson, Levin Oliver Zimmerman, Basil Edward Wright. From the state of Wisconsin, Richard Charles Treadwell, William McGinty, Matthew John Rittner, Fred Robert Wasiski, and John David Hetland.
From the federal agencies, Michelle T. Paul, Kenneth Robert Meisel, Lowry Ware Sr., Louis Henry Aguirre, Jason Kai Fan, Joseph Dennis Helton Jr., Liquat Ali Khan, Donna Marie Doss, Robert Mark Houghton.
Continuing federal agencies, Louis O. Pena Jr., Richard McCoy, Omar E. Palmer, Cheng Kok Yan, Johan Morden, Alfonso H. Morietta, Enrique J. Rosetes, Roel D. La Fuente, Augustin Aguilar Jr.
Continuing from the federal agencies, Marco Antonio Gonzalez, Lucas G. Saudito, Carlo J. Kayabab, Domingo Jasso, Christopher Doyle Carney, Jose Antonio Santana, Richard Rios, John A. Fallon, Frederick H. Bathy, John Anthony Butchko.
Continuing from the federal agencies, Thomas Foley, Alfred F. Duckworth, Albert Gibson, Augustus Harris, Lorenzo C. Crywell, Charles T. Sparks, Richard Zeff, Jesse B. Bristol, William Cross, William Nathan Turner, Henry Peckinpah, Simon Combs, John B. McAdams, Norman D. Merkel, Brian Leith McGee, Betty Ann Pascarella, Anthony Charles McGrew, Oscar Jesus Temares.
From the Railroad Police, Charles Hale, Thomas Clay Warden, Thomas J. Sullivan, John Harrison Bousman, Archibald D. Brandon, Rube T. Pollock, Owen Mulgrew, E. William Hendricks, Boleslaw Wozniak, George Jemba, William E. Deal, George Durst Farmer, Henry Clyde Hatcher, Oliver Columbus Grems, James Edward McDuffie, Robert W. Mulcahy, Victor Arthur McGee.
From the tribal agencies, Stephen Gasper Greco, Haska Thompson, Gordon C. James, Shannon Lee Barron, Clayton Joel Townsend, Charlie Joe Cortez, David Wesley Kellywood.
From the U.S. Territory of Guam, Glenn Timothy Francisco Martinez. From the U.S. Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Jesus Abner Marrero Martinez. Alfred Sañet Perez, Miguel Angel Martinez Ortiz, Jose Antonio Garcia Vasquez, Ricardo Perez Ortiz, Mayra Mercedes Rodriguez Burgado, Pedro Joel Rodriguez Mateo.
May these heroes of America rest in peace, and may they and their families always be remembered. Behind every name read here tonight, and on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial, are stories and memories that burn brightly, tonight and always. Stories that inspire us, and memories that cannot welcome Dave Bray, U.S. Navy veteran and musician, who will sing Last Call during the lighting of the candles.
Man down, I'm bleeding out. There's no time, so please hear me out. And these are the last few words I'd like to say to you all. This is my last call. Tell my wife I love her and that I won't be home tonight. And thank her for those long, hard years we tried to get it right. And tell her I'll be waiting after she makes it through it all. This is my last call. But ask her to forgive me. Tell her I'm sorry, that I can't be the man that she's gonna need. Tell her I'll be waiting where the winter meets the fall. This is my last call. And tell my children that I love them. Oh yeah, that daddy always loved them so. And tell them to hold their mother tight and to never let her go. And tell them I'll always be watching, looking over them through it all. This is my last call. But tell them to fight for me, and do what's right for me. Choose a light for me, but don't ever forget me. Tell them I'll always be watching, and I'll be there every time they fall. This is my last call. For those who served beside me and who held that thin blue line, stand tall, stand strong, and hold your head up high. I'm sorry I let you down today, but please know I gave my all. This is my last call. My last. So raise a glass for me. And kick some ass for me. For me. Ring a bell for me. And send them straight to hell for me. I'd like to think I saved a few good lives, but I couldn't save them all. This is my last call. Said I'd like to think I saved a few good lives, but I couldn't save my own. This is my last call.
As guardians of public safety, law enforcement professionals are called upon to risk their lives every day for the safety and protection of others, and often to witness the unthinkable. Day or night, on duty or off, they never stop protecting others. Their heroism is unparalleled, and the debt of gratitude we owe them can never be fully paid. Many of those men and women are here with us tonight. We honor you today and every day. Our memorial, your memorial, pays tribute to the heroic spirit of those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Each year, with heavy hearts, we carve their names in marble so that their stories will never be forgotten. Behind every name engraved on the memorial wall are the officers' loved ones whose watch has not ended and whose grief sadly endures. Tonight, we come together in solidarity with and support of the surviving families and agencies of those heroes to respect, honor, and remember their loss. As we raise our candles skyward in silent tribute, but united by light, we pledge to always remember and cherish those who have fallen, those who have been left behind, and those who continue to serve. And let us always remember, it's not how these heroes died, but how they lived.
Tonight I'm going to ask you to sing with me in solidarity as we sing our song, Amazing Grace. Oh, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. And I was blind, but now I can see. It was grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears it relieves. Oh, how precious did that grace appear in the hour I first believed. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. was blind, but now I can see. I was blind, but now I can see. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, for your safety, please carefully extinguish your candles at this time. Please rise for the retreat of colors.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude our ceremony, we'd like to acknowledge our featured singers and participants. U.S. Navy veteran Dave Bray, who performed Last Call and Amazing Grace. Len Kessler, who produced the tribute to America's Thin Blue Line. Our bagpipe soloist, First Sergeant Michael R. McCann of the Virginia State Police Department. Lastly, thank you to retired Sergeant Richard Pizzuto of the United States Capitol Police Ceremonial Unit, who performed taps. Thank you all for coming. May God bless you. May God bless all of America's police officers and their families. And may God bless the United States of America.
When leaving the Candlelight Vigil, Buses to the Hilton Mark Center Hotel will depart from 14th Street. Walk in the direction of the Washington Monument. Buses to the Crystal City hotels will depart from 7th Street in the direction of the U.S. Capitol. Please allow those persons with yellow badges to have priority in boarding the buses.